Hello. Welcome back. Don't really have much of an intro for this story. It's been sitting on my hard drive since last October, and since YouTube really likes for you to upload as much as possible, and also since I'm not waiting to this October to release this story, today you're going to get a Halloween-ish story a week after Mother's Day and a week before Memorial Day. So with that said, today's episode is entitled The Haunted Corn Maze,
where the boundaries between the living and the supernatural blur in a labyrinth of towering corn stalks. On a crisp autumn night, Jamie and her friends venture into the infamous Warner's Farm maze, only to find themselves ensnared in a nightmarish graveyard of whispers and shadows. As they navigate the eerie twists and turns, pursued by ghostly apparitions and a sinister red-eyed figure, the maze demands a sacrifice, and their only hope is to outrun the horrors that lie within. Enter if you dare, but beware, you may never find your way out.
And now without further ado.
It was a crisp, autumn night when Jamie and her friends decided to visit Warner's Farm, famous for their elaborate corn maze. This year's maze was designed to look like a graveyard, with tall corn stalks carved into tombstones and mausoleums. They arrived at the farm just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow across the sprawling fields. Jamie, Sarah, Mark, and David were excited, yet a bit apprehensive about the maze. They had heard rumors that it was haunted, but they dismissed them as just stories meant to scare kids. Armed with only flashlights, they set off into the maze, their laughter and chatter filling the cool night air. They joked about how corny this all was, pun fully intended. The entrance to the maze was marked by an archway made of twisted, dried corn stalks, and a sign that read,
"Enter if you dare."
They stepped through, feeling a slight chill as they passed under the arch. The corn stalks on either side of them were taller than they had expected, towering over their heads and casting long, eerie shadows in the moonlight. At first, the maze was fun. They took selfies, making goofy faces and pretending to be scared. The tombstone-shaped corn formations were impressive, and they marveled at the creativity of the design. But soon, they realized they had made a wrong turn and were lost deep within the towering stalks. The laughter faded, replaced by a sense of unease.
Okay, this is getting a little creepy,
Sarah said, glancing around nervously.
How do we get out of here?
Let's just keep going.
Mark suggested, trying to sound confident.
We'll find the way eventually.
They pressed on, but the paths all started to look the same. The cornstalk seemed to close in on them, creating an oppressive, claustrophobic feeling. The air grew colder, and a dense fog began to roll in, making it even harder to see. That's when they started hearing the whispering voices. At first, it was faint, barely audible above the rustling of the corn. But as they continued, the whispers grew louder and more distinct, seeming to come from all around them.
"Get out!"
A raspy voice hissed. The friends froze, shining their flashlights frantically through the stalks.
Who's there?
Jamie called out nervously. Silence. They exchanged worried glances, their earlier bravado replaced with genuine fear. They quickened their pace, taking turn after turn, but couldn't find the exit. The corn seemed to shift and rustle around them even though there was no wind. It was as if the maze was alive, conspiring to keep them trapped.
"Maybe we should split up.
David suggested.
We might cover more ground that way."
Are you crazy?
Sarah snapped.
That's how people die in horror movies.
Reluctantly, they agreed to stay together and kept moving. The whispering voices followed them, growing more insistent and threatening. Then, they stumbled into a clearing with a single cornstalk crucifix looming tall. On its base sat a scythe stained with red. Jamie shrieked when she noticed the crimson liquid slowly dripping from the blade.
"The maze wants a sacrifice.
The voices whispered through the stalks.
Give us blood."
Panic set in. They fled in terror, the creepy whispers and rustling corn chasing close behind. Every turn they took seemed to lead them deeper into the maze. The fog thickened, and they could barely see a few feet in front of them.
Over here!
Mark shouted, pointing to a faint light in the distance. They ran toward it, hearts pounding, hoping it was the exit. But as they neared the light, they found themselves back at the cornstalk crucifix. The scythe was gone, and in its place was a small, bloody handprint. Jamie's breath caught in her throat as she realized it was too small to belong to any of them.
This isn't happening.
She whispered, tears streaming down her face.
This can't be real.
We have to keep moving.
David said, his voice trembling.
We can't stay here.
They turned and ran in the opposite direction, desperate to escape the maze's clutches. The whispers grew louder, now accompanied by the sound of footsteps crunching on the dry leaves. It felt as though unseen hands were reaching out from the corn, trying to pull them back. Finally, they spotted flashlights and heard laughter, the exit. Bursting out onto the dirt path, they collapsed in relief, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and fear. They looked around, expecting to see other visitors, but the area was eerily empty.
Where is everyone?
Sarah asked, her voice shaky.
I don't know.
Jamie replied, trying to catch her breath.
But we're out. That's all that matters.
Just before the attendant closed the gate, Jamie glanced back and saw a lone dark figure standing silently within the corn, watching them. The figure was tall and shadowy, with glowing red eyes that pierced through the darkness. Then it evaporated into the stalks, as if it had never been there at all.
Did you see that?
Jamie asked, her voice barely above a whisper.
See what?
Mark replied, looking back at the maze.
I didn't see anything.
Jamie shivered, feeling a cold breeze sweep past her. She knew what she had seen, and it wasn't a trick of the light. Something sinister lurked within the maze, something that would continue to haunt her dreams. They made their way back to the car in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. As they drove away from Warner's farm, the fog lifted, revealing a clear, starry night. But the sense of unease remained, a lingering reminder of the horrors they had faced in the haunted corn maze. That night, Jamie couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the dark figure watching her from the corn. She heard the whispers, felt the cold, clammy hands reaching out to grab her. She knew that the maze was more than just a Halloween attraction. It was a place where the lines between the living and the dead blurred, where the past and present collided in a terrifying dance. Weeks passed, and the memories of the maze began to fade, replaced by the routine of everyday life. But Jamie couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed her home. She would catch glimpses of shadowy figures out of the corner of her eye, hear faint whispers when she was alone. She tried to convince herself it was just her imagination, but deep down, she knew the truth. The maze had marked her, and it wasn't finished with her yet.
The haunted corn maze will be picked back up in October. There's some questions that need to be answered. But until then, you know where to leave your thoughts. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all that jib-jab. Click one of the other videos you see on your screen to listen to more stories. Okay. That's it for me now. See you in the future.